Training season is almost here. This summer, we want to be sure our new staff members are set up for success. Here are our top tips for doing just that.
Do you ever feel like you're spending so much time at the office that you have no time left for camp? With UltraCamp, you can track attendance, manage staff applications, and streamline registration so you'll be back outside in no time. Find out more at ultracampmanagement.com/campcode.
Welcome to Camp Code, a podcast brought to you by Go Camp Pro. We have created and are dedicated to this podcast because we believe that staff training is one of, if not the most important part of your job as a camp director. Staff training is what prepares your staff to care for their campers, to feel confident in their skills, to do their jobs to the best of their ability, and to learn along the way. A well thought out and intentional staff training will help you in more ways than you can imagine, and we need to help each other bring our very best. Before we get rolling on our topic today, I'd love to do a round of introductions. Beth?
All right. I am Beth Allison. I'm co-owner of Camp Hacker and Go Camp Pro, and my pronouns are she and her. And I am a camp consultant and trainer coming to you today from rainy Woodstock, Ontario, Canada.
Thanks, Beth. Gabrielle?
And my name is Gabrielle Rail, and I'm one of the camp directors of Camp Chore. Camp Chore is an all-girls camp in the Laurentian Mountains of Quebec, Canada, and we focus on creating a positive environment for gender minorities, and my pronouns are she, her.
And I'm Ruby Compton. My pronouns are she, her. I am based in Western North Carolina near Asheville, and I'm the Chief Exploration Officer for Ruby Outdoors. I work as a friend and supporter of camp and getting ready for a busy training season of CPR and lifeguarding and all that here in the next few weeks. Today's topic is 9 things you must do with your first year staff when they arrive at camp. And we know that, as Beth said, training season is upon us and we're thinking about a lot of different things, but we definitely think there are some priorities that you want to set forth as we move into this particular training season. So Beth, will you start us off? What's your first thing you want to recommend?
You need to make them feel like you've been waiting for them all year to arrive. So things like send them a link the day before that you don't have to activate until like an hour before they're supposed to arrive, with instructions that they're to click on the link when they get to the camp road. And then share your excitement with a video that says, I am so glad you are here. I can't wait to get to know you. I know you have so much to add to this community. I'm excited for the rest of the staff to meet you and learn from you. I know you might be a little bit nervous, but don't worry, we got you. Whatever you like, say whatever you want. But from the moment they hit your property, they feel expected and welcomed and like they complete camp. So other ideas would be to have signage on the road every like 50 feet with different ways of saying how excited you are that they're here. And if you can, to mention each one of them by name at some point along the road. You can have short handwritten notes on their bunks or on their lockers, or if you don't have either of those, signage with all of your staff members' names and maybe a photo board when they arrive with their job title underneath so that they can begin to put names to faces, because you've already sent them out a list of everyone's name on staff weeks ago so that they can learn them and so that they can visually see that they're a part of this important team. You can even make the board of photos spell out an important word or the name of your camp so that it shows without them there, it wouldn't be complete. You can have specific staff there to greet them and prep them to say, welcome to camp. We've been waiting for you. And in the excited way, not the you're late kind of way, but we've been waiting for you. Give them several staff members to help them with their luggage if you're a sleepaway camp, so that they already know a good 3 people before they come to the first session. And of course, you have front loaded with these returning staff members who are helping with luggage what a great welcome looks like and sounds like and feels like, and who are ready to help them with the first steps on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So where the washrooms are, what the schedule is for the day, the week, however you give that info out, when meals are, when they get breaks, where they can get water or snacks, and then who can hang out with them and get to know them better before things officially start. You want to maybe give them something that makes them a part of the team. So maybe when they arrive, they get a hat or a t-shirt or a fanny pack, or if you don't have a lot of money, stickers or a fancy name tag, tree cookies, or something like that that might refer to the theme of the week. And I know a lot of us have our staff make name tags when they arrive, but I always feel like if there's a name tag ready to go, it says, we were expecting you. We're ready for you. And you want them to be wearing something when they arrive at that very first session that everybody else in the room is wearing too. So like I said, maybe it's a fun sticker. And of course, as the director or the program director, you should be there to greet every new staff member personally. So whether it's when they get out of the car or when they arrive at the first session spot, whomever is in charge is there to make them feel welcome and important. So my first tip is make them feel welcome. And it's also a great way to get your return staff involved and role modeling before you even officially begin training. So that's my first tip. Make them feel welcome.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Gabrielle, what would you add?
I love that. I would like to do an exercise with my returning staff to reverse engineer what we want the end of the summer to look like. Picture the last day of camp when all the campers have gone home and we're doing our celebration, whatever your celebration may look like. What is the feel? What are people saying? How are people acting? Who is with who? And help our returning staff members imagine that picture and then say, now, how do we want to help staff members get there? And what do we need to do to make that happen? And then I would divide them into groups, and they would choose one of the main goals and come up with a plan on, during staff training, how do we help accomplish staff members, coming out of their shell? How do we help staff members feel welcome? And really put it in their in their hands. I tell my staff often that as far as my power extends is me standing up in front of people and setting expectations. But after that, people take cues from returning staff members on believing what I say. And so we also look at my expectations that I set up. What would you all like me to say? And then what can they reinforce during staff training so that those staff members can really, really shine and really feel welcomed and welcome to ask questions, make mistakes, be themselves. So I would run a reverse engineering workshop with my returning staff members and get them to problem solve and make a plan. And then after that, I'd have them, present that to each other. And then lastly, I would have each returning staff member have a card that is titled, goal. And they can write their own personal private goal for how they can prep that for the staff members, for themselves, so they're welcome staff members. And then lastly, I would also put a little bit of responsibility on new staff members, ask them how they're going to put themselves out there, ask them what they need, and then give themselves also a card saying how they're going to make that effort. Because I've also seen at camp where returning staff members are trying to reach out to new staff members, and the effort just isn't there. And after you've tried 2 or 3 times, you sort of the motivation has gone down. So I would put responsibility for both, but definitely a little bit more emphasis on the returning staff members and empower them to do this work.
Smart. Yeah, to follow up on kind of that initial arrival, I think one thing that you may want to consider, especially in an overnight program, but maybe even a day camp program as well, is as soon as your staff members get there and kind of get a quick orientation, know where to put their stuff, I'll talk about that more in a second, give them space to let home know that they made it okay. This is a generation of folks who are more connected, and the expectation of communication is much higher than it used to be. And so whether it's a Snapchat, a phone call, or whatever, that was something that was incorporated into our welcome process. Is we would lead the staff members to the staff lounge and say, this is where the internet is, this is where the phone is. If you need to call home or let someone know that you've made it okay, now's the time to do so. And then put away their technology. don't let them do that without having that touch base moment. That's important. And I think it can be a little scary, just very similar to how we kind of want to get campers separated from their parents as quickly as possible because we're worried about homesickness. So we want to make sure before we have our staff make that connection home, that they've already created some connection at camp where they have arrived. And I have to echo a lot of what Beth said, that idea of like, there is a place for you. We have been waiting for you. This is where you go. This is where your stuff goes. This is where your car goes. Like all of that needs to be really clear and really well planned out. And if it's somebody who's coming to work in the office, I think this is really true for year-round folks or, seasonal leadership folks who are going to have office space. They need to have their workspace already set up. They need to already have a mailbox, a voicemail box even set up. Yeah, they can go back and change the greeting, but go ahead and get those things ready to go so they're not sitting around waiting for that stuff to happen. They can jump right into work. And this idea of this place was created for you. We have been waiting for you. And I think about my very first camp job when I was 19. I felt like, if you remember the TV show Road Rules on MTV, I felt like I was starting on an adventure like that. Like they had signs all down the road and people to direct us at parking. And then once I got in there, like all along the way, there was someone to tell you where to go next. And you're like walking up and meeting people and they're directing you to the next place. And I just felt like I was starting on this grand adventure with these new teammates. And it was so cool. And compare that to another job that I started where I had gotten a text message that said, park in this field and make your way up the hill. And I got there and felt very like, am I going in the right direction? There were no signs. So really think about what that experience is for someone who's brand new to the facility. And the last little piece I'll say about that is consider getting your leadership team or folks who might be there ahead of time to help you make phone calls to those new staff and touch base and just 5 minutes. Hey, this is so-and-so from camp, checking in, reminding you that you're supposed to arrive at this time. When you get here, park in this place. Do you have any questions? And if nothing else, it gives them a name and one connection point. So when that new staff gets to camp, they can go, oh, hey, Susan, like I talked to you on the phone. And it gives them another connection point before you really get going.
So smart.
It's so good. And I know that for us, it's called welcome chats. And it takes a little bit of a setup because you want to set up those staff members well with the person that's doing the welcome chat. But it makes such a difference, not just for the new staff member, but for the returning staff member. They're already excited about saying just naturally hi to that person. And there's like almost like a little bit of a responsibility ownership that happens. And so we've been doing this for 5 or 6 years now. And I'll tell you, I will never, it's one of the priorities that we have is these welcome chats. So I totally agree with that, Ruby.
It totally also helps the return staff feel that pride about camp and about the job and about their place, that they are welcoming someone new. So the whole thing is just a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
And we do it often with campers, right? Like a lot of camps will call campers ahead of time, but not staff. So we need to add them to that list.
It's been really fun because one of my former staff members is now in a director role at one of the camps that I ran. And I went for a walk with him recently and he was like, it is so fun giving staff jobs. And I was like, I know, right? And so it's just yet another one of those life skills that if we give them the opportunity to reach out and touch base with folks ahead of time, it's another piece of experience in the experience bank that they can use elsewhere.
100%. Mm-hmm. My former associate director went on to do another job with an adventure camp industry. And he messaged me one day and said, we just brought a new staff member on into the office. This was year-round staff. And I thought about her experience and what that was going to be like. And I spent half a day getting her office and the boards around her office and photo boards and all that stuff ready for her and leaving little notes in her desk that she would find over the course of the first few weeks and all of that stuff. And he said, I felt so excited for her to arrive. And I learned all of that stuff from working at camp. So yes, we're teaching them great skills.
And it just trickles down. I think the biggest conversation that I have with my returning staff who just care about our campers, and that's why they're coming back, that everything we put into our new staff members is that's how they learn how to care for our campers. And you just see that it that extra care because of that. And I I love the idea of like the little notes in the desk, and it's just so wonderful. It's just very kind.
All right, we're going to take a break and hear from our sponsors, and we'll be right back. We wouldn't be here today podcasting for you without the support from our sponsor, Ultra Camp. Have you heard that Ultra Camp is offering a free guide titled 5 Unique Ways to Connect with Campers Outside of Camp? When you visit ultracampmanagement.com/camp code, you can download this free guide, and you can also find out more about Ultra Camp's transparent and flexible pricing that lets you rest easy and focused on what is most important, your campers. There are no long-term contracts. They have clear pricing with no hidden costs, a low minimum entry, and flexible payment terms. Ultra Camp's goal is to provide resources so their clients can spend more time in camp doing what they do best. If all this doesn't sound like your registration software, don't you think it should? Visit their website, ultracampmanagement.com/camp code, and set up a time to chat. They look forward to meeting you. And we are back discussing 9 things to do with your new staff when they arrive this summer. And we're going to continue our discussion with Beth.
Thanks, Ruby. I'm going to sort of jump off what Gab has already talked about, and she hinted at it, but didn't actually say it out loud. And so my tip is bring them in second. So we used to have our return staff arrive in the morning on the first full day of staff training, and our newbies came after lunch. And this provided us 2 opportunities. And Gab has already given you some great ideas. I have a couple more. So it allowed return staff the time to yell and scream with excitement and hug one another and be super keen and loud about being at camp without our newbies being intimidated or feeling left out. It also gave us time to work with the return staff to set the tone and front load their responsibilities with the new staff. As Gab said, how could they role model, be of help, what they could do to help us train our new staff? This was also a time to get the return staff creative juices flowing to plan a welcome party, to figure out how they wanted to give new staff the camp tour, or even more important, the true inside scoop on how to make the most of staff training, how they could best share some camp lingo, or when the best time is to get morning coffee, or what the best stall is in the washroom. Any of those like tips and tricks for getting the best out of camp as a staff person. So when new staff arrived, for example, the veterans have already prepared a way to share answers to FAQs, or have had time to create short videos or skits sharing their best tips for new staff to get answers to their most pressing questions. So bring them in second and get your returning staff ways to figure out how to give the best little tips and tricks to new staff for the most successful training time at camp.
Perfect. Gabs, what would you add to that?
We want to build our new staff members' confidence, because I think returning staff members just have a leg up in people thinking that they're awesome, and because of previous experiences. And so I'd like to look at how can we sort of shine a positive spotlight on our new staff members. How do we make them the hero? How do we make them shine a little bit? And one of the ways I think to do that is by sending out a survey in advance and finding out, what's something that you do well that maybe other people don't know. Already with some of the surveys responses that we got, some people that are amazing at doing origami, or basically being able to make anything from any ingredients. And then there's other really interesting ones that could be implemented in our actual staff training. I'd like to try to create a time where new staff members are showing returning staff members skills that they have, because as much as our returning staff members do make an effort to get to know our staff, I think shining a spotlight just pushes a little bit our returning staff members closer to them, saying like, wow, that is really, really cool. It's truly getting to know them. One of my favorite activities that I do where returning staff members and new staff members get to know each other, even though it doesn't have to be totally a new staff member, it can be somebody that they don't really know. It's just like the little walk and talk that you do around camp or in your area. And one of my favorite questions that I have is, talk about or share why a certain person is really special to you. And that certain special should be somebody that is older. So it could be a grandparent or a grandparent-like figure. And I find that this conversation is a very soft way of putting a little spotlight on each other, because when they all come back, you share what you learned about your partner. And it's very hard to not really fall in love with somebody that is talking passionately about why this individual is special to them and how maybe they created space and et cetera, et cetera. So really having an opportunity to show that new staff members have something to offer and that they're a whole person. One, helps with connections, but two, I think also helps with building confidence.
So smart, so smart. And I'll add to that the idea of making sure you've built in lots of different avenues for asking questions. So not everyone is going to feel comfortable raising their hand in front of the rest of the group and asking a question. Not everyone's going to feel comfortable coming up and asking you after the session, because you're like the director and you're probably going to judge them for whatever question you have, even if you're not, right? So create lots of different ways that folks can pose questions. I've seen the question box with pieces of paper and writing utensils that can be done anonymously. Gots and needs is one of my favorite routines where you have a chance. Usually I do it with a note card, and one side is tell me something you got out of today or this session. And on the flip side, tell me something you still need. Having a parking lot, like a marker board or a big piece of paper where anytime you have a question about anything, you can just go write it up there. And then in little breaks, you can go through and address those, or making sure that you're addressing some of those questions in future sessions. Creating that one-on-one time, like Gabs was saying, with staff. So maybe one of your transition times from one training session to the next to say, hey, pair up with a staff member who you haven't spent any time with, especially if you're a returner, try to grab a new staff member and ask questions that you may have. What questions are still in your mind about what we just talked about or about camp? Think about, can you create or set up like a Google Voice line or some other like online line where people can text questions or call in with questions. So if they have stuff that come up late at night or, whenever they think about it, we're an instant gratification kind of world. So if they're able to go ahead and pose that question, even if you don't answer it right away, when they're able to submit it when they first think of it, it's more likely they're actually going to bring that question up. Maybe it's an online survey at the end of every day that they fill out that has questions about how their day was, what they found, what they need, what they learned, what questions they still have. Maybe it's just very simple. What questions do you still have about your job? It doesn't have to be super complicated. Give them a staff manual for all the ups and downs of a staff manual, the good and the bad. There are some folks that will turn to their staff manual for questions. And so give them that resource and point them to other resources that you already have built out at camp. I always wanted to build a staff wiki page where all of our information was, and I just never got it done. But that's a great project in the off season. I don't know if I try to do it right now, or if you have some extra time with your staff members, your leadership team twiddling their thumbs, like now's the time you could do that. And the flip side of that is make sure you provide a little bit of training to your return staff about how grateful you want them to be when a question is asked, and that they are answering with grace and respect and kindness, so that folks will understand that questions are normal and they're a really important part of our camp community. And I think also be really careful about doing the like staging questions and having return staff raise their hand and ask questions that sound really like, yeah, but what do I do if there's a camper who doesn't want to eat their lunch? Like kind of prompting. Be careful of that because people see right through it. So again, normalize question asking and make sure your return staff have some tools for how to respond, and gratitude. Start with gratitude every time.
So clever.
I think we've got time for one more round because we did promise you 9. So I think we've gotten more than 9 already, but
Maybe.
under promise, over deliver. That's what we do. All right, Beth, what else do you have?
Give them a support system. So whether they know it or not. So yes, you've ensured that they've met a few people who will be there with them through your first game or your session or team building time, but they should also know who they go to if they have a question during training. Do you have a section head or a head counselor or a program director for specific kinds of questions? You just want to make sure that this is part of the information that their welcoming committee will give them before things get underway. Another thing I would do is assign them a study buddy. If they've never been a part of staff training before, give them a veteran staff member who will sit with them for their first few sessions and, make sure they answer questions, ensure that they're understanding things and feeling okay about stuff. If you have a week or more of training, then this can ease off as the sessions go along, but you want to make sure you've set them up saying, this is Ruby. She's going to sit with you and she is there for you. If you have any needs at all, she's your person. And if you only have a few days, maybe that person stays with them or they get somebody new on day 2. So the other thing I would do is make sure you do lots of check-ins. So check in with them after their first session. If you have a lot of new staff, you can divide up this responsibility among your leadership team, but you want to check in. Check in with them after all of their firsts, after their first meal, their first night's sleep if you're an overnight camp, their second morning, day or overnight. It doesn't have to be formal, but it has to be done and it can't be forgotten. So again, you want to maybe have a team divide up the work and make sure that gets done. And at the end of the first day, you or a senior member of your staff can meet with all of your new staff, maybe after campfire or before they head home, and run a quick but really poignant session that says, hey, you got this. You were hired because we believe in you. We know you might feel a little bit overwhelmed right now, and that's perfectly natural. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay because we honor mistakes here. Training is to help you make better decisions, to protect yourself and to do the best job that you can. And whatever you're feeling right now, that is cool. You just let me know if you need extra support or a listening ear or an extra snack or a cool couple of stickers for your Nalgene, whatever you want, but it's just a way at the end of the first day to create another layer of check-in. Then I would meet with them all together the second morning, maybe have a 10-minute group check-in, answer questions, review really important information from the day before, and let them know you're going to be checking in throughout the week because that's what you do because you care. These are all parts of that support system that you've started the moment they arrive, or if you've listened to any of our podcasts over the last 9 seasons, that you have begun to front load with them before they were even hired. So set up a support system.
Brilliant. We all need a support system. We'll talk more about that in our next episode too.
Absolutely.
Very good. Gabs, anything else you want to add on this topic?
I would, from the very beginning, I would let them know you will not know how to do your job in its entirety, and staff training will not prepare you to know how to do your job in its entirety. That would be part A. And I would say that at the very beginning. And if you're still hiring people, tell it to them during their hiring chat. And then part B would be at the end of staff training. I would rephrase that. I would restate that, and then I would lay out, but this is what you do know now, and help them come up with a list of the things that they have learned. And so for me, this way is just setting, perspective checks, I think, is really important. Being clear with expectations is important, and letting them know that that is enough to do the job. Because what we care about is you caring about the kids and you asking questions. That's what we care about. And that's how we're going to build a strong team throughout the summer. The summer is a training ground. So set that expectation. So we're being clear with them, and their anxiety is going down. But they can also look at what they have learned and how they're already even more set up than they were than on the first day of staff training.
Great. I want to add this last kind of zany idea, because that's what I like to do, is throw out a zany idea. And that is, what if your arrival day was your person arrives and they put their stuff down, they have a chance to go to the bathroom, get some water, let folks know they've made it to camp, and then they immediately get put in a work group working on a chore. I think it's important for your staff during training to have time to do chores and work around camp together. That has looked like in my past, weeding the volleyball court by hand. That has looked like doing trail work. That informal time is really when relationships are built. And instead of being so focused on social anxiety and I don't know anyone, if you can give folks a task that they're doing alongside other people, then they forget about some of that, like, I'm awkward and I don't know anybody. And I have to say, my first day at my outdoor ed job, like first real job out of college, I got there, they said, this is where you're going to live. You'll have time to move in later. They're working on the trail. And so I got walked down and, kind of only got to know a couple of people who are on either side of me on the trail. So I wasn't being put in a room with 100 people or even 10 people that I had to get to know. It was like, okay, the people that are immediately on either side of me, we started talking. I got to ask questions that, were just on my mind about what the heck are we doing here? I got to know an area of camp. So I wonder about shifting our first day or that first hour where maybe you have some projects in progress. And then as folks arrive, just filter them to those different projects. And maybe even some of that is welcoming new staff. So there's just a lot of ways I think you could play with it, but rethink this idea of like people arrive and then we're going to put them in this holding pen, waiting for everybody to get there. Instead, let's get them active and doing something, and then we can bring everybody back together.
So nice. Camp is such a great opportunity for so many. There's so many spaces where we can provide connections. I just feel so lucky to be part of this industry.
Agreed. Well, Gabrielle, I think we have come to the time. It's the recap time.
What? Well, it sort of just does itself. Honestly, Beth, I know that we're used to the 4 S's, but in this one, guess what? You and Ruby created 3 S's. Want to hear them? Of course you do.
Of course I do.
Yes.
Signage, swag, and space setup. These are 3 things that you want to do for your new staff members. Think about signage, think about swag, and think about how we can set up their space so that they can feel welcomed. Speaking of welcome, there's other things that you can do to make people feel welcomed. Welcome notes, welcome party, and welcome chats. 3 things under welcome that you can do by having your returning staff members help you welcome our new staff members. Wait, did we just say returning staff members? Guess what? There's some roles for them. Get them to reverse engineer. What do we want that staff party to look like? What's that vibe? And what are some of the things that we would like to do to help them get there? Create a game plan card so they have a little bit of personal responsibility and have them brainstorm how they can welcome the staff members and present it to the other returning staff members. Now, new staff members also can take a little bit of responsibility. How are they going to connect with everybody else on the team? What are some barriers that they might have? How can they ask for help to come over those barriers? But other things that we can do for them is building their confidence. Let them lead some things. Help them lead group discussions. We can also do check-ins. I love what Beth said is first. Every time a new staff member has a first, where is there an opportunity to do that check-in? And on the second morning, that's a good time also to do check-ins. And perhaps, as Ruby said, maybe get them involved in projects, because sometimes just parallel play and just being in presence of other people, doing something together, accomplishing together, that's great teamwork, and your volleyball court will look never the better. Lastly, questions. My goodness. Gots and needs. Text those questions. Staff manuals. Stage authentic questions. We want our staff members to practice questions throughout the entire staff training, because that's what we want them to do during the summer. Listen, new staff members are brilliant, brilliant people, because they're the ones that come in and say, hey, why do we do that? It's weird. But if they don't feel comfortable to say that, then we'll never be able to change the weird things that happen at our camp. I'm so grateful for our new staff members to taking a chance and a risk with us this summer. Camps could not do it without you. So thank you to all of our new staff members that are taking that leap into the summer camp professional role. And to returning staff members, you'll never know when you'll meet your new best friend.
Spot on, spot on. Thanks so much, Gabrielle, for that great recap. And we would love for you to get involved with the podcast. You can tell us your thoughts on this episode by using the hashtag Camp Code. You can also tell us what topics you'd like for us to discuss, any guests you'd recommend that we have on the show, any great leadership training tips you have to share. We'd love to hear from you. We are all about sharing in this industry. Speaking of sharing, if you have found this podcast to be useful, please leave us a rating and review in your podcasting app of choice. Your feedback helps keep the show going and helps other folks find this show. Before we move on to our talking about our next episode and our final episode of this season, as well as our best practice for today, we'd love to let you know how you can get in touch. Beth, how can folks reach you?
Our website is gocamp.pro. You can email me directly, beth@gocamp.pro, or I'm on Twitter @Topaz.
Awesome. And Gabrielle?
You can email me at info@waro.com, and you can check out where I work at waro.com. Waro is Ouareau. And you can follow me on Instagram at Gabrielle Rail. Rail takes 2 L's.
And you can email me, ruby@rubyoutdoors.com. You can also find me on Instagram at rubyoutdoors. For our next podcast, we will be discussing the topic, Our Industry is Struggling. What's next? Ooh. Our final segment on each podcast is a best practice for leadership training, and we would love to hear some of your memorable moments or most effective tips. Again, you can tell us what they are using that hashtag Camp Code. And this week, Gabrielle has our best practice.
My best practice comes from my very dear friend, Claude Caméra, that worked with me at Waro for many years. And one year, speaking about new staff members, I came up with the idea of getting new staff members headlamps, because that was something that a lot of new staff members didn't come to camp with. And I was very, very excited about it. And before I pressed the pay button, she said, just one moment. If you do that, then everybody will know who is a new staff member at your camp. And so just check what you're doing for your new staff members. And our goal is to make them inclusive. So we did do something else. It wasn't headlamps. We also made sure we contacted our new staff members and told them where they could get headlamps. But when you're doing something nice for a certain group at camp, remember, we're trying to bring them together. And so I do think swag is really lovely so that they're not excluded. The next thing that we did is that we would have a bunch of camp swag that we hadn't sold over the past couple of years, not because they weren't nice, because our swag is lovely, but just that maybe there were some sizes that, that just no longer, people just didn't want these items anymore. We gave it to our new staff members. New staff members could go shopping, and they could donate what they wanted to our campership fund, and our asking price was $1. And if they wanted to put a little bit more, they could if they wanted to. But we wanted our new staff members to have camp swag, and we wanted them to have a little bit of ownership of what they wanted. And this way, also, if they're wearing something that's a little bit older from past years, it's kind of like they've been with us for a while. So just let's be conscious about the swag, and also let's just make sure new staff members do have swag, so it's not this sort of this invisible line at our camp.
So smart. That is such a genius idea. I love it. Well, my friends, Camp Code is a part of the Go Camp Pro podcast network. You can check out all our other podcasts at gocamp.pro/podcasts. There are some amazing people with some sage advice, so look them up and give them a listen. In fact, last night I had the privilege of listening to the Fundraising at Camp podcast, where they were their own version of the Mythbusters. Heather, Joe, and Travis took on some of the most common fundraising fallacies. If you understand that money moves the mission, this show is for you. Check it out on your podcasting app by searching for Fundraising at Camp. That's at like in an email address, Fundraising at Camp. For now, from all of us here at Camp Code, thanks for the listening, friends.